All right, we have some breaking news pertaining to the Jalen Carter legal situation. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. So Victoria Bowles, who survived the car wreck involving Jalen Carter after the Georgia parade, after the Bulldogs won the national championship, has filed a lawsuit mentioning Jalen Carter's name in that lawsuit. Here's everything you need to know with what we know up to this moment here on this Thursday. Lawsuit filed against Carter, as well as the University of Georgia Athletic Association. The lawsuit accuses Carter of illegally leaving the scene. Now, there was some body cam footage from some of the police officers who were on scene, and they interviewed Jalen Carter at the time, and some of that footage was made available a couple of months ago. I'm sure a lot of you saw it. Jalen Carter had pleaded no contest on March 16th to misdemeanor charges, and what he got was 12 months of probation, 80 hours of community service, and a $1,000 fine. All of this news really making the headlines during the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, when Jalen Carter actually had to leave because there was a warrant out for his arrest. And if this situation didn't happen, if this lawsuit didn't come to light, there is the potential possibility that Jalen Carter would have went number one in the draft, but partially because of the situation, that's why he fell to number 9 overall to the Eagles. And of course, our thoughts and prayers and our condolences go out to the two people who passed away in this tragic incident, a former Georgia player as well as a staff member. Here's some information, and this is what the Victoria Bowles lawsuit does mention. Despite LeCroy's passenger, former Georgia offensive lineman Warren McClendon, stating to him that he could not locate Devin Willock, Defendant Carter left the scene after less than 10 minutes when another UGA football player at the scene yelled at him, "Yo, hey JC, you might want to go ahead and get the F on, yo." As Defendant Carter was aware at the time, he was jointly responsible for the crash and had a legal duty to remain on the scene. Instead, in part, obviously fearful of bad publicity and the effect on his NFL draft status, he hoped not to be questioned or take any responsibility for his actions. So that is the lawsuit filed from Victoria Bowles, at least a snippet of that lawsuit, and that's where Jalen Carter has been mentioned here. Now make sure you subscribe to the show because we give you year-round coverage of the Philadelphia Eagles. Ideally, we're talking football, but when news like this happens and comes to the forefront, we break that down as well. Your home for Eagles breaking news and year-round coverage of the Birds. We're approaching 50,000 subscribers, so make sure you lock us in and hit that sub button right now. What I want to do next is kind of take a look at the timeline of some of these incidents involving Carter. So the crash happened on January 5th. On March 1, during the NFL Scouting Combine, Carter was present. He was about to meet with the media in Indianapolis. The arrest warrant is issued. Then he had to go back to Athens because of that. On May 10th, $40 million lawsuit was filed. Carter was a defendant in that lawsuit. And then you have another lawsuit filed here by Victoria Bowles on July 13th here of 2023. Now, when it comes to the Eagles drafting of Jalen Carter, the Eagles knew that something like this could happen and that something like this would probably come to the forefront. Carter was involved in an unresolved legal matter, which is ongoing. And during the pre-draft process, the Eagles had to vet this situation. They had to do their research. They had to interview Carter. They probably interviewed authorities and people directly tied to that January crash. So they understood that taking him was going to be a risk in drafting him, and that something like this could transpire weeks and months down the road. The Eagles clearly had to do their research and do their due diligence on the draft pick. Number 9 overall, they're going to invest a lot of money in him as a pure football player. He has a boatload of potential, but in drafting a player like this, with a little bit of a dark cloud hovering over his head, they had to know that there would be some blowback as well, and they came to the conclusion that they should be in the clear, and I think they're going to be in the clear here. I'm not surprised that Jalen Carter is involved in this lawsuit. I used to be a news reporter at WNEP in Scranton, and oftentimes these situations do happen in which a defendant is named in a lawsuit. That is the legal matter of this. I'm interested to see if Jalen Carter is going to be willing to settle here, because it's not like he has a bunch of money in the bank. He was just drafted into the NFL, and obviously he's trying to save some of that money, and if he believes that he is innocent in this manner, I'm interested to see what him and his lawyer and him and his defense decide to do here. Either way, this isn't obviously the best look for a rookie to have this type of situation follow him heading into year one, but young people make dumb mistakes. I'm 31 years old right now. I was very, very dumb when I was growing up, and I made countless mistakes, right? Some people know about them, some people don't, and that's just the reality of the situation. That's part of us maturing and the maturation process that we go through in life, that when we're young, we don't really understand the implications of some of our decisions here. But for Philadelphia with Carter, they watched the tape. They saw the impact that he had at Georgia, and the talent was difficult to pass up on for Philadelphia. They had a need at defensive tackle after Javon Hargrave had moved on, and they look at him as a potential franchise cornerstone and a building block for this team, which has this new wave of young talent, a lot of that young talent from the University of Georgia. More thoughts here on Carter. His potential as a football player is limitless. He has all of the ability in the world to be an impactful player along that defensive front. His extraordinary versatility, along that defensive line is why so many teams were drawn to him in the pre-draft process. He can literally line up and play everywhere. And can the Eagles' stable culture really help him out? Just on the defensive side of the ball, you have Brandon Graham, a tenured seasoned pro who's an all-time Eagles great. The same can be said for Fletcher Cox. On the offensive end, you have Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts. Going back to the defensive side of the football, you have Darius Slay. Like, they have a stable culture to keep, hopefully, Jalen Carter in line so that he can avoid situations like this in the future, and so that he can mature a little bit, because he obviously is a little bit immature, and him leaving the scene, if that's the case, not the best idea, right? I'm sure that he was thinking, shoot, this could mess up my draft stock, and he had to make a decision on the fly. Not the best decision, right? But again, young people do make mistakes, and tragically, 2 people lost their lives in a situation that Carter had ties with, and his familiarity with his Georgia teammates hopefully can help him steer clear of some of these issues as well, because he's playing with some of these Georgia Bulldogs here. Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Keely Ringo, the list goes on and on and on. What Carter did last year, obviously very impressive for the national champion Georgia Bulldogs, en route to one of the most dominant college football seasons that we've seen in recent time. 32 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 pass breakups. But a reason why I like Carter as a prospect, and I don't know him personally to say anything about him negatively or positively in that regard, although his teammates do swear that he is a good dude, is his versatility. His snap alignment certainly shows that from a year ago. This is a guy who can line up anywhere along that defensive front and impact the game, drawing double teams, beating offensive linemen with the bull rush. He has that speed to chase down quarterbacks, running backs, and he has that speed to accelerate downfield and just be so active in the backfield as a disruptor and a guy who could take over the game by his lonesome. Lined up on that A-gap 30 times, over tackle 83, B-gap, that's that defensive tackle area on the interior, 255 snaps, but he also lined up outside the tackle as a stand-up edge rusher 20 times. So that goes to show you the alignment and the versatility that he has strictly and solely as a defensive lineman. So before we hop on out of here, what do you think? Will Jalen Carter be a good player in this league? Is this too much to overcome in the early going? Type G for good, B for bad. All we're trying to do is do our job here on the show and bring you the latest news here on Jalen Carter and the Philadelphia Eagles.